Hey everybody, it's Book of Katherine. So I wanted to talk to you today about something I kind of think is really important considering the things I've found recently. So I'm just going to say what it is at the top instead of going through all the research. I'll go through all the research afterwards. So the people who have been doing Bible prophecies and doing all this stuff say that the city of Babylon is going to be built up and then destroyed in their end times prophecies. And they're all taking a look at the city of Babylon, which they look at and say Saddam Hussein has been rebuilding up with Saddam's palace. And what they don't realize is that they admit that the land of Shinar is used interchangeably with the city of Babylon. What they don't understand is that the land of Shinar, as they say, is the county in which Babylon resides. What they don't understand is that Baghdad is actually where the world is actually doing all of its trading right now. That's where all the treaties are done right now. Right now, Baghdad in Iraq is where all the stuff goes down. It's not Washington, D.C. It is actually Baghdad. And that's what my people and I diggers and I know from our research, that we know CENTO, look up CENTO, CENTO, is a treaty organization. It's been going on since the United Nations. It's something that the British government came up with to do things all throughout the Mesopotamian region. It's in the green zone of Baghdad. If you look up the Republican Palace, it's this massive palace structure. And if you look up the kind of flying that happens in and out of Iraq, there is so much going on in Baghdad to the point that they actually have so many regulations that the taxi cab drivers there, they have so many different world leaders coming in and out of there that they actually have regulations to the point that you have to pay an extra 300 pounds, like 300 pounds if you want to just be a taxi cab driver. If you want to take a taxi cab and you're a government official, you have to pay an extra 300 pounds just to take a taxi cab in that area. They actually scalp, the government of Baghdad has put tons of regulations. If you are a regular visitor to Baghdad, you don't have to pay all these extra taxes and levies, but because so much of the world's trade and business is done in Baghdad, literally all the world's trades and treaties are done in the green zone in Baghdad. The United Nations is doing all of these treaties and stuff is doing it right in Baghdad in that green zone because it's all being done there. They have all these extra laws and treaties that scalp all these laws and leaders. And what they do is all the laws and leaders, they go ahead and just pass it on to their tax payers. And this is something that was very hard for my diggers and I to breach up. And we didn't know anything about Babylon. We've actually been looking into, I was talking to my U.S. Marines guys about it, how interesting Babylon was. For example, like Kathy Griffin went around. And I should say, for those of you who don't know anything about Bible translation or anything or prophecies, they're saying this land of Shinar and Babylon is going to be laid waste with something on the level of nuclear. And we're talking here, they prophesy more than like Jesus is coming, which we've seen how interesting that prophecy was fulfilled. They prophesied, the Bible prophesies more about this destruction of Babylon than they do about that. And they prophesy in such detail. Let me give you an example. And this is why I feel like I need to talk about this now, because I'm like, oh my gosh, like once I just accidentally fit with, YouTube autoplay, it sent me into this video and I woke up this morning with it playing because I fell asleep to it because I was in a lot of pain from recovery. Fell into this video and I'm like, what's happening now? And Chuck Missler was talking about how Russia was going to invade Europe. And I'm just like, I'm sorry, when was this? And and it was right before Russia invaded Europe. And it was prophesied in Ezekiel 38 and 39. And it was the next thing that was coming is going to be Babylon. And I was like, what's happening now? And one of the things that they talk about in Babylon, one of the predictions made about Babylon is it says none of the bricks will be able to be reused. And that freaked me the heck out. And let me tell you why that freaked me the heck out. Because you guys know from our research before we ever touched any of this Bible stuff or knew about end times prophecies, because we've been digging up on how ancient civilizations, remember, we've been digging up in the Babylon area, in the Mesopotamia area, which, by the way, the land of Shinar is basically the whole area of Mesopotamia, the whole area that Saddam Hussein built up, which is all the UNESCO heritage sites. So UNESCO, the United Nations has been building up and protecting and doing all their business at these heritage sites, and they have a ton of travelers come through. They make a ton of money off of it, calling these museum sites. They're protecting these sites and putting all this investment into the sites. They take over these sites. All of these sites are becoming owned by the international community. That should tell you the land of Shinar is now owned by the United Nations, this UN empire. Every UNESCO site, almost the entire land of Shinar now, if you look at it, look up Shinar, and it goes, Shinar is a term used in the Hebrew Bible for the general region of Mesopotamia, and it's got like 30 different sites on it. And I'm like, that's every UN UNESCO heritage site, World Heritage Site, which means it's owned by the United Nations, which means it's owned by the Sustainable Development group that we've talked about, which means it's owned by world leaders, which means it's literally Babylon. That's Babylon that we've heard about proclaimed in the Bible, that when it's destroyed, it'll be, oh, Babylon, Babylon, the thing that we've traded in you, all these things, if it's wiped out with nuclear. And the reason I bring that up is because what is Iran, the next door neighbor, doing? That's where Iraq is, where the United States, is based right now. The United States is based in Baghdad. All of our troops are based in Baghdad. And as Iran is lifting up all these warnings, they're putting the warnings onto Baghdad. This place that's prophesied is being wiped out with a nuclear weapon. Every time Iran is upping the stakes, they're upping the stakes onto Iraq. This place. And I don't want to hear it. I know that I've barely gotten into any of this stuff, but they're saying, oh, we're looking for a northern king. And I'm like, have you looked who the Ayatollah is? He's white as heck. He looks like a freaking hobbit. The Ayatollah, just because they say northern king, have you looked at who the Ayatollah is? It's not the Shah of Iran who runs Iran. You know what I mean? These are these white kings who put in their people, super, super wealthy. But the ISIS and all these UN people, it's all run by the royal families and the Pope in Rome of Europe. They've been running these areas and just have these governorships out there. And so that is a northern king. And I know I can just see it now that they're saying so anyway, it says that one of the predictions, it says that I'm running on, but it's scaring the heck out of me because so many predictions now have come true that I'm listening to Chuck Missler say, and I'm like, oh, really? Where our troops are stationed and where all this business is happening. Everyone, then the Bible people seem to be relaxed. They're like, keep your eye on Babylon. Keep your eye. They're going to build this city up. And I'm like, no, according to you, the city includes Baghdad, and that's built up. No one knows it because they think the green zone is off limits, but we know it. We diggers know it. We've been looking into it. We've read it, and it's not. It's where all the trade, Cento, the Republican Palace, it's where all the world trade is done now. It's not done in DC. It's not done in London. It's not done in Frankfurt. The world trade does all of its trade in Baghdad, in the land of Shinar now. And what does it say when this destruction of Babylon will hit? It says the world will be on Israel's side. You're right. If Iran wipes out Iraq, Baghdad, the world will be on Israel's side. It won't be on the United States' side. They'll say Trump brought this on. Trump and his Christians will bring it on, and they will go after and slaughter all the Prince of Peace, the prince that's coming from Assyria, and his Syrian king will come and say, you know how to solve all this is just to wipe out all these Christians, and that will solve it because Trump was the leader of all these Christians. The United States is this only predominantly Christian state. If we had just wiped out those Christians to begin with, none of this would have happened. And but that's supposed to be the Antichrist, some Assyrian king. And you could just see it happening because of this nuclear event happening in Iraq that supposedly Trump brought on or whatever. And I'm just like, oh my God. And it actually says, I counted it 8 times from Chuck Missler's charts. 8 times it says the bricks in Babylon will not be able to be reused to rebuild. It says that for 7 years, the land won't be able to be retouched or something like that. And that anyone who tries to go onto the land, when they find remains, they won't touch it. They'll leave it for somebody else to clean up. Not only that, the reason the bricks will not be able to be rebuilt just keeps on ringing at me is because all of the research that I've been posting for however many months about the land of Babylon has been like, look, King Nebuchadnezzar rebuilt the Tower of Babel. We knew it was the Tower of Babel because there was a brick on the Tower of Babel that read from King Nebuchadnezzar. He left a brick saying, this was a tower left here from a king of old. We're going to rebuild it. And then he rebuilt a tower over that. Then King Hussein built another tower, and he used a brick from that, saying this was a brick from this. Then King Hussein built his palace, and in it he built bricks, and he said, this is from the palace rebuilt of King Nebuchadnezzar, of which I am an inheritor. I am in his race. He said, I'm Nebuchadnezzar the second, which really there were like 9 Nebuchadnezzars or whatever. But the point is that in that region, all we've been studying for our stuff has been bricks and how they've been reused and rebranded in the whole region of Mesopotamia. I haven't been studying bricks in the Chicago area. That I've been studying blood and money. In the Mesopotamia region, all I've been studying is bricks. Come to find out this morning, there's a chart with Chuck Missler, and I'll try to include the link right here. But there's this video where it says, like, by the way, like, yeah, bricks will not be able to be used to rebuild anymore in that area ever again, because whatever kind of destruction will happen in that area will wipe it out, that no man will be able to enter that area again. And it describes the destruction in that area so detailed. And remember that this prophecy of Ezekiel in 38 and 39, this happens literally, you will not believe this, in 592 BCE, which means it's King Nebuchadnezzar's time. It means that when Rome starts up, when the kingdom of Rome gets going, when they start shedding blood, doing the drawing and quartering of courses, when the prophet Tanaquil gets going, when the prophetess Tanaquil gets going and the eagle of Rome is born, literally all of a sudden there's the prophet Daniel crops up with an end times prediction. Ezekiel cropped up, 592. Daniel was 602 BCE, end times prediction. Ezekiel was 592, end times prediction. All of a sudden, these very, very detailed end times predictions happen. Really, when the Roman eagle is born, when Tanaquil comes around, I am very curious if Tanaquil had what her predictions were, about what her prophecies were about the future. Because I can guarantee you, like, Rome must know some of it, because they've been the way they've been ruling. And then, Chuck Missler says something very interesting. He said, in one afternoon, a pope killed more saints than any Roman emperor combined. And I'm like, doesn't that show you that the pope is like some kind of Roman emperor, that they're just a continuation of the Roman emperors? It's very, very scary. So anyway, I just wanted to point that out, that it just really does behoove us to really study, like, cross reference. I think that people, I'm glad I've started studying the Bible, but I wouldn't have caught any of this stuff if I wasn't studying world history as well and digging into what's on the ground. I don't know. Anyway, so I just got across this morning so that by the time, like, my husband got home, I was just like, what the heck? And you can bet, so I have more studying to do, but I just think that at least my officers in Babylon, at least my officers in Baghdad need to know that. And I know that I actually wore this on purpose today. I wore my unicorn earrings on purpose today because I realized there are people who believe in angels and demons, and you can't see angels and demons. And I'm like, unicorns, why don't people believe in unicorns? There are pictures of angels and demons when you can't see them and people believe in them. There are pictures of unicorns. And I'm like, who ever imagined something? There are unicorns on the actual, unicorns are actually mentioned in the Bible, little horns. They're actual things. And I read up the book, The Last Unicorn, and it was dedicated to the man that had seen the last sight. There had been sightings in America of unicorns. And I'm just like, just because we haven't laid our eyes on these things, I think we're living in a time where I'm learning that what I was taught, we're just living in a time where we can't believe every Google search. We're going to have to start trusting each other a bit more and start understanding that there are people who don't want the best for us. And I don't know. It's freaking me how, I don't know. I just sitting there watching Chuck Missler in 2010 or whatever say, everything's lined up for an invasion for Russia for here. Everything's lined up for, and I look it up and it's like 2014 Russia invades. And I'm like, what in the heck is going on? And all these things, and I've already seen all these predictions come true. And all the more we dig into the Bible, the more predictions are coming true. And then seeing how the Bible, all these predictions are in reaction to everything happening in Rome. Rome, seeing how it's all in a reaction to it. And then constantly seeing things in Revelations, constantly seeing it in Revelations just reflected in our society today. That I feel like I have to say something. When they say something like the land of Shinar, they're like, well, that's the county, just so you know. And I'm like, well, no one knows. Like, for example, I guess that's the thing, is that no one knows that, I keep saying Babylon now. No one knows that Baghdad's going on. No one knows that Baghdad's going on because they write all these articles that say, oh, it's such a hard thing to get a plane to land in Baghdad. No one knows. I dare you to look here. I'll show it to you. This is the Republican Palace in Baghdad. Do you see this thing? That's the Republican Palace in Baghdad right now. Like right now. And this is just one of thousands of mansions and places these people meet. Like, here's what they want you to think is Iraq. They want you to think Iraq is like this. There's a huge campaign for you to think Iraq is like that. When in reality, all the public officials are going over and meeting in that. That's what Iraq is actually like. Iraq is gorgeous, the frickin' house. I mean, Saddam Hussein made thousands and thousands of meeting rooms filled with marble. Just gorgeous, gorgeous marble meeting rooms. This is Iraq. Or should I say Babylon? I mean, it is stunning over there. Stunning. And so when Kathy Griffin goes over there and she says, oh, it's a S-hole country. When she says that kind of thing about, here. And she says it's S-hole country. Does she tell you this is where she's staying? That she's staying in palaces like that? That's what our Marines are protecting. When our Marines are over there in Baghdad, like this is our Marines. This is where our Marines get to stay. They're staying in palaces like that. And you know what they do? All they do is they host all the foreign officials who come around and go on tours as they do business over there. You go to Washington, D.C., and it's empty because everyone's over in Baghdad doing and staying in gorgeous, gorgeous Saddam Hussein palaces like that. And that's the whole purpose of Kathy Griffin going to Iraq, the whole purpose of these comedians going to Iraq and doing things like this, going to Babylon and doing tours like this is so that they come back to you and they say Iraq is an S-hole country when really Iraq is Babylon. So that you don't know the entire world's trade is going down there. I guess that's my point, is that I know that that's what's going on in the land of Shinar. So when you say to me, oh, the land of Shinar, I think of that. You don't. You little Bible people around the world are thinking, oh, war-torn Iraq. I don't. Me and my diggers don't. Me and my diggers think of all the thousands of United Nations. Let me show you. We think of these huge Doha climate change panels that happen all over the world because the United Nations, I couldn't believe it when Chuck Missler actually opened his mouth and said, oh, the United Nations wants to move from New York. And I was like, the United Nations isn't in New York. I was like, they're not in New York. The United Nations has a massive, massive conference hall in every single country across the globe. They meet in Marrakesh. This is in Qatar. That's how big their conference hall is in Qatar. They meet in Poland. Their Germany is where they meet the most often. He said, oh, they don't want to meet in Berlin, Germany for obvious reasons. No, Germany is their headquarters. Berlin, Germany is their headquarters. You know, that's why I say Revelations matches up so well, because there's 3 dragons, and that would be Italy and Germany and the UK. One dragon opens its mouth, the deceiver from Rome, where it got a little seed from Tanaquil. It opens its mouth, and out came Germany. Oh, and then out came the UK, and the UK is where all the press comes out. All the press is owned and based in the UK, and that's where all the deceiving comes from all over the world or whatever. At least that's what our research has shown, and that's what I say Revelations. So that's just Doha. So let's go ahead and see what the Poland things looks like, or let's do Marrakesh. Let's do the Marrakesh Climate Change Conference for the UN. Marrakesh. Let's do that. This is the UN in Marrakesh. See that? Marrakech 2016. That's when the UN got together. The UN actually gets together all the time. They get together numerous times a year, except they don't say there that they're the UN. They do this new symbol, the CC, so that they can meet all the time and you guys don't know it. And they do world deals. They do, I don't even want to get into it. You want to look into climate change and see that they do water, air, traffic, sea, because climate change controls every area of your life. Climate change is not about the air that you breathe. Climate change is about the climate of the earth culturally. So they have global goals for the climate. So they have these 17 global goals that the UN, as you can see in that little bowl up there, the Roman symbol around the thing, and you see each of these, this is no poverty, which means they control the economy of all the globe. This is 2, no hunger. They control the food of all the globe. Number 3, that says they want to say health. So they want nationalized health care in all the globe, in every country across the globe. This is number 4, education. So they have UNESCO to control the education system across the globe. That's why your teachers have to do what Rome says to do. Not what you want, not democracy, but what Rome says to do. And then gender studies. So that's why all these transgender things are passed, because Rome says this is what happens. And then your water, trash, transportation, every single piece. This, you go into this, all your guns get taken away, because underneath the Armistice Treaty, all these goals are traded around at the UN level in every single country across the world. And then what do? They finalize it in Baghdad, which is now, as we know, known as Babylon, the land of Shinar, which, as we now know, is predicted right about now, from what I calculated, if you do the whole abomination of desolation. Sorry, but one of the calculations, I know there's a few of them, but one of them is 2020. If you actually calculate the abomination desolation being the actual Islam temple being on the Temple of the Mount, it started to be built in 685. You add on the certain number of years, that becomes 2020. Now, I don't know all the... Chuck Missler said there are a certain number of days. The day of the years is 685, and really there's a 680 days of the years, or 665 or whatever. I don't know all of that. I'm not that good. But if it is as it could be 2027, I don't know. Also, by the way, there's no such thing as a rapture. It says like there's one person who's going to be raptured. Lucky to that person, but I don't know about all this other rapture stuff. I can't believe even Chuck Missler says there's going to be a rapture. I haven't found a rapture. Can somebody please start reading into the text and what it actually says? Honestly. Anyway, so there's a lot of people freaking out. So I'm just saying, if these predictions are actually happening, I'm just saying there is a shot. I'm saying for prediction wise, because I bet there's a lot of people who bet on the Bible. Maybe that's why Jews are so wealthy, because they've got this big, huge text that tells them what's coming, and they're always ready for it. So they bet on the fact that, hey, Russia's going to go ahead and invade, and they make that money because they're right about it all the time. Maybe that's why Jewish families are so wealthy, just because they've got this thing that's always right all the time. I don't know. But what I do know is, if there's a chance that there is a bigger nuclear threat or a bigger chemical warfare threat, whatever, I do know Let me give you one last shot at why this thing freaks me out. It says that 90% Isaiah's thing, I looked into Isaiah. Isaiah says 90% of the world's population is going to be wiped out. Let me show you something. Now, if you've looked into that sustainable development thing, you would know that actually climate change is population control. Oh, they love to tell you, no, it's not. Yeah, it is. It absolutely is population control. That's why the yoga instructions say don't have kids. That's population control. That's why they have Bayer putting out so many, like anyway, it is. Like, it absolutely is population control. But if you don't want to believe me that it's population control, then let's go ahead and look at the Georgia guidestones that are right there in Georgia. And do you know what they say on them? That, you know what, that no one seems to care about. That rumor has it there's more than one round the globe. What does it say on there? Besides everything that's in sustainable development and climate change. The number one goal it has is maintain humanity under 500 million in perpetual balance with nature. That is Gaia. That's the religion of Gaia. Oh, going back to Tanaquil, the very first prophet of Rome. Number one thing, 500 million. That would be 10% of the world's population. And don't you think when they have things like this, I'll say guide production widely, improving fitness and diversity. Number two is the diversity. That is exactly climate change goals that they meet worldwide. I mean, do I need to unite humanity with a living new language? What is it that they're working right now on? What is it that the global climate change thing is working on? They want translators to have something that meets together so that when you speak, we all understand each other. That is where they're pushing AI. I mean, really. Okay, so pause. Oh, should I bring up the fact that it says, let's rule all things in world courts, in a global world court? There's just too many things. I could just spill out all my research onto you, but I should probably get this tape out. So I'm just saying I added up some of the math. Some of it says 2020. And I'm just saying since Iran is ramping up and targeting Americans and Americans are in Iraq, where it said that, hey, in Iraq is supposedly Babylon and Babylon is supposed to be destroyed. And let's go ahead and see just how much Chuck Missler says that Babylon is going to be destroyed. Let's take a look at that. Every one of those boxes is a verse about the destruction of Babylon. Hashtag destruction, / land of Shinar. Which he, by the way, links with the text of Micah as saying Rome is the same thing. Rome's linked with these people. Which I'm like, yep, I've been saying that. Babylon is Rome. And so what does it say? Many nations will attack it. Israel is now in the land of the forgiven. It'll be like Sodom and Gomorrah. Oh, gosh, like that. Just when it says like Sodom and Gomorrah, can we go ahead and talk about the fact that I just showed you that the transgender thing or whatever and stuff like that it's the LGBT thing. It just breaks my heart because I keep telling the LGBT community, like, they're using you for something. There's always a back thing to the back of it. Like, there's always a back, like, when they hand you money and when they say, like, we want to use you, there's always something in the back of it. And I'm like, there's just a ton. So I'll include this video. And anyway, there's just a lot. And I guess, that's right. I was going to show you this. Like, when we're seeing this kind of a chart, right? Do you notice how they say, oh, look, this is like 20% of the world with this same thin line at 20% of the world under $1.25 a day, but that same thin line goes all the way up to here? You know, so basically 80% of the world is making $1.25 a day, and only this, it's gone up. Do you know what this means? This is really telling us how much of the world has just been knocked off and gone up here. I'm telling you, when you hear about China, I mean, we really need to start understanding 10 years into Agenda 21, just let's put some things into perspective here. When it says 90% of the world's population is going to be killed off. Okay, so they say we had a certain number billion people in the world at the turn of the century in 1900. And then socialism got going, right? Socialism got going and it started killing off how many millions of people immediately. And we knew those numbers were pared down. That's like hundreds of millions of people were killed off immediately in the first 50 years. Well, now socialism is in more than half the globe. The United Nations has pushed it so far. They adopted in 72. They've pushed it so far that it's in more than half the globe. What do you think's happening to those people? Because what they do is they put them in work camps. That's what the Nazis did. They put them in work camps and work them to death. They work them until they die. Like we see them work them in China, and that's why China's now importing people by trainloads. All these trains that are going into China, it's human trafficking. Like no perishable thing can survive in it except for humans. We know that they're trafficking in humans at this huge astronomical rate, and it's like, they're burning off the humans faster than they can for the amount of goods that they need. I'm like, the dollar store is the fastest way to kill off humanity. Because you need goods. These things only so much of this dollar store can be made by machine. Most of it needs to be made by hand. And we just we just consume so much. So many Americans just have garages full of consumer goods that they just buy through. Well, people had to make all that. I mean, we're just mass murdering people by look at Nazi Germany and how they burned through people. Just how they burn through people through work. They don't feed them. They just burn through the people. But they need their biggest profits. And so now, they found this way to, work them and keep them alive the longest. But they still just burn through them because they want the most profits. And because these people don't plan on living. They know their lifestyles are going to be, they know they're going to be living 100 years. They're not thinking, keep anything for my kids. I remember the last cruise my husband and I went on before my health finally tanked too much. I remember the generation that was on there was burning through their money. They didn't want their kids to have any of that money for their inheritance. They were like, we don't want our kids to have any of it. They were literally, usually on a cruise line, the casino floor is empty. Not with this cruise. The casino floor was packed. We were like, okay. And they didn't even seem happy doing it. They were like, we're just doing this so our kids don't get the money. And I'm like, so you're going to give it to who? What? You could at least donate it or something. I don't know. It's just very disturbing to run into. But now we run into these things about talking about and I'm like, oh, well, this makes a bit more sense or whatever. It's very, very interesting when you talk about, I just remember the first 10 years of UN 21, it said 1/6 of the world went into slums. 1/6 of the world went into slums. And they said, well, the UN says they're going to do something about it. And I was like, no, the UN created it. Well, how much of that world do you think survived those slums? They went into a place without healthcare. They lost the healthcare. For example, all of this poverty created more dowry deaths in India. I mean, this kind of thing pushes death on the world, and we don't see it because the internet hides it all. We have Instagram. Instagram hides every bad thing on this earth. So this massive amount of dying could be going on, and is going on. There are genocides, for example. I was watching UN Watch once, and he started listing off all these genocides that have happened in just the last 10 to 15 years, and I hadn't heard of a single one of them. Just genocides in these socialist countries across the globe. I hadn't heard of any of them. I didn't know about any of these genocides. Just genocides, massive travesties. And because of the internet and because the UK and the BBC says that, a man asking a woman out on a date is the biggest travesty in this world. I said to someone recently, I said, if any of Trump's kids were caught with a Nazi swastika on their arm, they'd be in jail. But Prince Harry was caught with a Nazi swastika on his arm, and it was a joke. I was like, what's the difference? The difference is his DNA, and he lives in a country with a monarchy. I was like, the monarchy still exists. The monarchy still exists. There is still racism in this world. And most of Europe is still so monarchy-based that Europe sees America as trashed because we left the monarchs. They actually think that they think Americans are stupid and they think Americans are white trash because we left our monarchs behind and said that we are created equal. And they're like, how dare you think yourself created equal? And so they will probably be on board for the slaughter of Americans or slaughter of Christians because Christians were the ones responsible for leaving monarchs. And how dare they fight the master-servant? How dare they fight the master-servant bond? Don't they know that you should be servants? And then there will be no one standing between them when the masters come for them and put them in the work camps. Anyway, so be attention, be aware. So what happens besides the rapture from what I'm reading? What I'm reading is that it says that find yourself a place to hide. And I'm like, you've got to be kidding me. The survivalists are going to love me. I'm just like, the survivalists, I'm just like, oh my God, it says find a safe place. Like, it actually says, like, take yourself away to a safe place and hide yourself. And I'm just like, oh my God. Oh God, of all the things to say. That's just a turn of phrase. Like, I'm just like, oh my God. Anyway, I'm focused on Babylon right now. I haven't even thought of, like, the rest of it. Like, what that could trigger. And then there's the whole Battle of Megiddo. But I have to just say this. Is the Megiddo even where they say it is? Really? I mean, the Roman Empire took out all of Judea, and they own the maps. I don't even know if Megiddo is where they say it is. Armageddon is the hill they say it's on. They all say it's on this map. Yeah, well, Google says that Taiwan is a part of China right now. Is it? Nope, it's not. Gotta be careful what Rome tells you. So again, I'm telling you guys, like I said, it's not everything. Anyway, all right, love you guys. Land of Shinar it's cooking. Land of Shinar ain't dead, not empty, just so you know. Love you. Bye. Please donate down below. Enjoy the last unicorn. Au revoir. Mwah.